very much. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully everyone is doing well wherever they are in the world, and it's nice to see a global community coming together around topics like this, because we're going through global events that we're all sharing shared experiences that we've never had an opportunity to experience again. And that's what I want to talk about is, the past few months have been about adapting, and now it's about time to turn the page and move to adoption. Mary did a great job of kind of giving an overview of my background, but I want to go just a little bit deeper so you understand kind of the angle that I look at things through and the approach that I take. As mentioned, previously, from both a consulting and an operating perspective, I've been building and helping to build digital businesses for the better part of the last 20 years. And currently, I'm doing much more advisory work, whether it be from a board perspective to a consumer products company that wants to move into the digital space, to startups that are taking a part of the customer experience and looking to expand on that. And then most recently, I joined with a good friend around our own startup, specifically in the fulfillment space, because we both believe it is an undiscovered country. So enough about me. Let's talk about the situation at hand. If I can advance this. So I don't know where all of you were in March. I know where I was. I was on the golf course with a couple of good friends, and we were just having a normal afternoon game when all of a sudden our phones started to explode with either updates coming from news agencies or questions coming from loved ones in terms of what does this mean when things changed, we hit the pause button, and the world downshifted. It is a press of the pause button that none of us have seen in our lifetimes, and frankly, it's hard to grasp the entire scale because it happened to everyone at the same time, everywhere. And we all know the debate, we all know the analysis, we know those that have applauded, those that have criticized, but it happened, and it's been important, and it's been impactful, and I think it's important to understand what comes out of it and what we learn moving forward. My intent today is not to focus on the political. It's just not. My intent, there are smarter people than I to do that. My focus is on the practical. And it's really about what this has meant, what this means, and could mean for businesses of any size. As we move from surviving this pause moment as it relates to the pandemic, to recovery, to ultimately thriving. And, just a disclaimer, it's not exhaustive in scope. I hope it's informative, and I hope it sparks an idea or two, because that is the intention. So, I think it's always important to start with yourself when thinking about what happened from an adaptation standpoint. And I think about my own journey. And my simple premise is this. If there was ever a time to be required to be inside, now was the time, because those of you that had access and means had an abundance of choice. And it made the ability to take your life offline and move it online at the same time a little simpler and a little easier to understand. I saw three great adaptations on my own. First one was video everything. Access to free, ubiquitous, easy to use technology that allowed us to be able to stay connected with people just exploded overnight. And I'm not sure about you, but I went from, very, very few moments, unless it was a business moment, to pretty much every part of my personal life, whether it be family or friends or birthdays or virtual happy hours or trivia nights, where people just wanted to feel connected. And the access to the technology allowed that. We also needed to have everything brought to us as we were asked to, stay indoors to, flatten the curve, and the access to, really mature and dependable e-commerce capabilities that brought pretty much anything to my doorstep. I know I tried things that I had never tried before. I'm sure many of you have done the same. The question is how much of this will stick moving forwards as a behavioral shift. And then the last thing, to stay entertained and to stay connected and to stay informed. And I'm almost embarrassed to identify the number of streaming services that I have available to me. But again, this abundance of choice made it easier to understand that I couldn't go out to do the things that I love to do, but I was able to still access a ton of information, a ton of content, and a ton of entertainment. The Barstool Sports one at the bottom is something I will come back to in a little bit, because it actually was a very unique experience that I had. But again, all this made the transition from being out and about to being in and finding ways to make myself comfortable much easier and palatable. I mean, if this had occurred just a couple of years ago, even 5 years ago, I'm not sure our experiences would have been as simple. Not perfect. No one found a way to deliver me a haircut, and my own attempts have gone horribly wrong, as many of ours have. So I wanted to take these examples and then take a look at how others may have used similar type of moments to start to reinvent their businesses. The examples, let's see. There we go. This is as much a chaos moment as there has ever been. And the world started to find ways to digitize itself and experiment in just a few weeks. And it spanned just about every facet, whether it be entertainment, music, sports, restaurants, medical, workspace, and we'll talk about retail a little bit later. It created moments where people were trying things and experimenting with new inventions and new approaches based on the things that they had available to them. So I just started observing, right? And as I was struck by something, I would clip it, I would take a screen print, I would send myself a text message, I would, just keep informed just to see what those experiences looked like. So let's dive into a few of them. Entertainment, I think, was really an interesting one, right? We've seen late night hosts, pivot and do their show from their homes and with minimal production, no audience, and basically family members helping them. We've seen ensemble casts like Saturday Night Live create entire sketches and shows from their homes. We've seen, past, shows and favorites, do YouTube specials for a table read like Community did, or a full-blown news show like Parks and Rec, or one of my own favorites, which is the example on the left, brought back one of their favorite skits to actually Zoom bomb for good, right? That there was a couple that couldn't get married. They had made this known. Some of the cast members found out about it, and they created a Zoom event where they all did the dance for Pam and Jim's wedding, and actually did it as part of the Zoom experience. As we move to the right, the people have also looked at how can they reinvent content creation safely. The Blacklist is a show on NBC that was born out of the graphic novel and turned into a live action show, but they got to the season conclusion and it was half done. And so what they chose to do was take the live action that they had, augment it with graphic novel animation, and create this really interesting mix of content and creation that might generate something in the future. As well as there are production groups that have started to create bubbles and started to create sterile studios and finding ways of keeping cast and crew safe as they move through to create content. The one on the right is the Barstool experience that I mentioned before. Dave Portnoy, who is the president of Barstool, somehow his home address got leaked out. Fans started to send him completely off the wall and crazy gifts, hundreds of them a day. And he started this content show on Instagram Live and YouTube Live, where he started to open these boxes. He basically just opened boxes, showed what he got, told stories, told jokes, etc. Some love it, some don't. And over time, what it became was actually a guerrilla marketing opportunity for small and medium-sized businesses to actually get their product out there. The glasses I'm wearing are actually an output of that they are Felix Gray blue blocking, reading glasses or blue light blocking reading glasses. And they actually help me given the amount of time that I spend in front of a computer as well. The last one was that there was, these series of, U.S. veteran-owned wood flag-making companies that were out there. And, given that I was looking for ways to give back in some way, shape, or form, and not to use too many props, I actually bought 5 from 5 different companies and took advantage of the opportunity to kind of learn the stories of these veteran-owned businesses that were struggling in this moment, but actually needed to get their word out. And again, all of these are interesting adaptations to the time. The question is, what will be adopted as we go forward and become part of the norm? Same thing happened in music, and I'm sure some of you have experienced some of these. We had Bocelli on Easter. We had, some of the largest stars in the world creating content from their homes, coming together for One World Together, raising, almost $130 million. Again, content created at home brought together. We had the BBC creating a We Are the World-like moment, but instead of all the artists needing to go into a studio, they all did this virtual jam session of a Foo Fighters song to be able to, again, raise awareness and raise money for COVID. And then we had these creative tributes, Post Malone covering Nirvana. And if you haven't seen it and you're either a Post Malone fan or a Nirvana fan, I suggest you go to YouTube and watch it because it's amazing. Miley Cyrus covering Pink Floyd on Saturday Night Live. And The Tonight Show, covering Queen and David Bowie. All of these were done, again, to kind of memorialize the moment, adjust their creative juices, but also raise money for charities as well. But again, is it an adaptation to the time, or does this become the adoption around these practices? And is this the way that we will enjoy concerts in the future in some way, shape, or form? Sports, I think, is another example. I'm an avid sports fan, so I watched the NFL draft when it was done remotely this year, and it was fascinating to watch in terms of how we did it. And it may have actually been an improved experience for fans at home. For those of us that like going to live sports, we are looking at a period of time where we are probably not going to be in attendance, even though the players will be. And what does that mean from that experience? And then, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a golfer. And so this made-for-TV event, the Match 2 with Tiger Woods and Phil Mickelson, and then two NFL quarterbacks, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, was intended to raise money, but it also became a different type of event. Because for the first time, in my experience, for a sporting event, they were advertising live betting. And it was promoted, it was openly discussed during the telecast, and it was giving as much airtime to DraftKings as a sponsor of this as it was to the cause that they were looking to support. The question becomes, is this the beginning of the mashup of betting, which we know happens on sports, but doing it live on one screen? Again, what changes will we see come out of this? Probably the most impacted space of all of them is restaurants, and I'm sure we've all done our part to try and help and support. But it was interesting to watch both macro and micro examples of this. Turning their models inside out. I mean, Chick-fil-A actually creating a meal kit so you could create a Chick-fil-A chicken parmesan sandwich at home, and giving you all the items and all the ingredients and the instructions to be able to do it well. And one of my favorite places in San Francisco, actually using their strength of, we have really, really great quality ingredients and products to turn themselves inside out to create a market and wine shop. And again, adaptation, or is this going to be an adoption as we move forward, as people start to recognize that these incremental services are really, really important to not only themselves as a consumer, but also as a business operator as well. Medicine, and I'm not sure how many of you have taken advantage of this. I have, given that we were asked to try to stay away from hospitals unless it was absolutely dire. Just being able to talk to your doctor and being able to use, again, something that becomes familiar to you, which is using a video conference solution, to be able to have that type of relationship with your doctor, to be able to go over your information, to be able to get comfort that that you are not crazy and or you actually need some type of treatment. But we've seen wild adoption around this recently in the last couple of months, even though we've been slow to do this. Again, adaptation, or will it become an adoption? The workplace itself, and I think that we've all experienced this as we've moved into the home as the workplace of choice. But what does this mean long term? And we've seen companies actually start to adopt it. I mean, as they've recognized the tools are there, the trust in the employees are there, the collaborative capabilities are there, and the desire is there. And we've seen companies like Twitter move first. Other large companies have done this. And then, but what becomes the impact on commercial real estate, right? I mean, I have a friend in commercial real estate here in San Francisco, and they've shared with me that there have been several million square feet of commercial real estate come online over the last 60 days that wasn't there before. And it's a drop in the bucket in terms of the total volume, but it's a major shift. And then also what becomes the impact on cities is people no longer need to commute into them. There's an impact here. And again, we will see what the adaptation, changes into adoption on this, but I think we've seen a change happen to the workplace bigger than we've ever seen in the past. And then retail. And I wanted to spend some time going into 4 different areas: personalization, customer experience, retail as a service, merchandising optimization, and supply chain and fulfillment. The first one being personalization and customer experience. That this can mean a lot of things to different people, but I just tried to pick up a couple of examples. I think as stores open, as stores continue to open, it's an understanding of what is this renewed trust that comes between the customer and the store owner. And I believe that that's going to be all driven around safety. But it has to be a two-way street. One of the requests that I have, very simply, is that we as consumers find a way to not make stores the battleground. If you've ever been in a retail experience, you know how hard it is to begin with. And this notion around, should I wear a mask or should I not wear a mask? I think it just becomes the standard of service. Just like no shirt, no shoes, no mask will become the standard. But then again, around this notion of trust and safety, right? How clean is it? What is the social distancing option? What options are we taking for our customers? What temperature checks and testing are we doing for our associates and employees? I mean, I think this is something we're going to continually see evolve and understand the impact that it has on the consumer to be able to trust that brand. The other side of that, and on the right side of the slide, is really about a change in the contact model. And it's about, full disclosure, Hero, the one at the top, is actually a company that I do some level of advisory work for. But it's about how they've created different lines of communication between the associate and the customer, whether it be text or video or product demonstrations or things of that nature. Being able to, show what is available to them in the store without actually coming into the store. The other option is, can we use AI, and can we use this notion of virtual humans that provide this notion of human touch in a digital world to be able to do some of those customer inquiry questions that even though it's a friendly face, it's not necessarily a human that is actually necessary to support that. I'm not sure what the answer is on this, but again, I think it becomes a question of how do we address the sentiment? How do we understand the effectiveness? How do we suggest alternatives? Excuse me. Retail as a service, and this can mean many things to many people. I tried to keep this as simple as possible, and I just wanted to use the example of curbside pickup, which is not a new experience. It's been around for a very long time. It's just being much more adopted as stores are opening for the first phase. And how do we use this as strategically as possible? Those statistics that I have out there of increase between 200 and 400% is probably light now, because this was a couple of weeks ago. We're probably in the thousands percent now as stores have opened. But what else could we do this time? Because I've used about 10 to 15 of these experiences. And one thing is consistent. They're well thought out, and they're very supportive, and the associates are incredibly kind when they come out. But there's a dwell period. There's a wait period. And I'm wondering what we could do with that, in some cases 10 to 15 minute wait between I'm here and I'm ready to the product is being placed in my trunk. Could we do things like, make this a trusted consolidated pickup location for multiple retailers? Is this a chance, because you have a captive audience who has a phone in their hand, to be able to push content to them around what's happening in the store, or what's happening with associates? Again, that safety protocol that I talked about before. How else could you start to communicate the brand value associated with that? Could you do new product intros and demos? Is this a way to use great content to be able to entertain while somebody is waiting, because you have them captive? And then lastly is, some retailers have started this notion of distance shopping by creating appointments. is curbside pickup just the first step? Is it the entry to appointment? Because if I'm comfortable doing this, can I get you comfortable to be able to come into the store? Again, what will we see as we start to evolve, as we start to measure the value of these, as we start to measure the impact of them, and then what we might be able to expand them into going forward? Merchandising, and you know, I think this is a fascinating one, and I think we've all experienced this, and every single one of you has your own story around what home is everything has meant, right? You know, home is the workplace, the school, the workout, you know, the place you worship, the place you entertain, you know, the place you feel safe. And how long will this trend last, right? I mean, I think as we shift from what I think I need, you know, to make home feel like everything, to what I think I need and want, which is probably going to be the next phase as we move forward, the role of the merchant is absolutely imperative. And I'm not a merchant. I have a ton of respect for merchants. I think they have one of the hardest jobs in the world, to be able to look in the future and be able to understand what people are going to want and need, but also to be able to drive desire as well. I think we're at the time where, you know, advanced merchandise analytics is absolutely imperative to be able to support that, because what's going to shift as we open, as we normalize, and, you know, God forbid if we have to repeat this process a number of times as we gain control of the world situation. Supply chain and fulfillment is the last area that I wanted to cover. And I think we all know the poster child of the pandemic, which was toilet paper, right? I'm not sure if your journey and experience was similar to mine, where it was the constant toilet paper chase, right? Where is it? Who has it? Why do I think I need more than I have already when I'm really not out? Why do I think it's the end of the world and I need to stock up? But I think in this question, it was really a constant search for some, and we used every bit of information that we could. There were Facebook groups that were started on this. You know, if you live somewhere where next door is a social, you know, community as well, you would hear updates and rumors where people would say that different stores had them. So the question becomes: is there value in making the supply chain more transparent in a B2C type of relationship, right? Myself as a consumer, it's important for me to understand where things are, when they will be delivered, where, and where I might be able to pick them up. You know, when you think about something like toilet paper, it never would have crossed my mind that would have been valuable, but maybe it does become valuable. I mean, we've had different conversations around the meat industry here in the U.S. and what might happen there as plants have come online and offline and some of the disruption. But again, being able to do that, and it's like, how far should it go? How deep should it be transparent? What is the value creation? And is it something someone is willing to pay for as a service? It's an open question. I'm not sure what the right answer is there. On the other side of it is in terms of how we get product to people. And speed has been where we have had this insatiable need, right? And my challenge is, I don't think it's sustainable, right? Especially as we have seen the step function up of everything being delivered to everyone. We have seen cracks in the ability to get things fast. And so it starts to open up opportunities around maybe, you know, choice and control of when and where are really as important as speed, because I'm not going to be around, and I want to make sure that nothing happens, that there isn't porch piracy or anything of that nature. And then there's the question of sustainability, right? I mean, as we continue to ask for more to be delivered to us instead of us going out to get things, it becomes a question of can the world support it? Can our cities support it? Can our supply chain support it in terms of being able to be sustainable, especially from an environmental impact? So, I mean, I ask you, you know, if you had the choice of when and where to have things delivered, and also knew if it was supportive of a reduced impact on the ecosystem, would you make different choices? I think this is something that we're going to battle and challenge ourselves with, and consider that speed is not the only option. But again, analytics around sentiment, effectiveness, alternatives, and the impact on sustainability, I think, is really going to be important. All right, so home stretch here. Let me summarize this. You know, I started this with the seismic pause, right, in terms of we were all somewhere in March when things kind of shut down. has become a seismic shift as we've all started to adapt. We have all adapted, and now we're looking to adopt new behaviors and capabilities, and how businesses are responding to those changes in preferences and behavior. Analytics are going to help us be able to understand what should be adopted and what should be improved, and basically maybe what shouldn't be tried again. We are in a confluence of technology and processes and our own attitudes that really empower this shift, and I think really push us towards greater adoption. Fear is always out there. Fear is, something that whether it's the pandemic or whether it's the events of the last couple of weeks, it's a dangerous foe, and I think it's going to be a constant companion for us for a future. I think really finding those moments of trust and establishing them and feeding them and earning them is going to be important, and facts win, and analytics usually support facts. And then it becomes attitudinal, right? What you say, what you do, how you generally show up now is going to resonate for a very long time. I think people will make choices with their wallet based on choices that are made by retailers now in terms of how they show up. And how we think through this next phase, in terms of what worked, what didn't work, what else we should experiment on, what else that we should try, it's going to need a thoughtful and informed response. And really, I truly believe that smart analytics are going to be at the core of being able to help ensure our success.